He was born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. on January 17, 1942 in Louisville, Kentucky, a southern city still drenched in Jim Crow racism and segregated sidewalks. His father was a sign painter, his mother a domestic worker. By all accounts, his world was small working class and bound by invisible chains, until one day at age 12, a stolen bicycle changed everything. Young Cassius ran to report the theft to a white police officer named Joe Martin, who just so happened to run a local boxing gym. "You better learn how to fight before you try to whoop someone," Martin told him. That moment set fire to something deep in the boy. Within weeks, he was training obsessively. By the time he was 18, he had already fought over 100 amateur bouts and would go on to win the light heavyweight gold medal at the 1960 Rome Olympics. But victory didn't buy him dignity. Returning to Louisville gold medal in hand, Ali was refused service at a whites-only restaurant. Humiliated, he allegedly threw the medal into the Ohio River, a symbol of both triumph and betrayal. This wasn't just about boxing. This was about being a black man in America. By 1964, at just 22 years old, he stunned the world by defeating the terrifying Sonny Liston to become the world heavyweight champion. He taunted Liston. He danced around him. And when the monster didn't rise for the 7th round, the world gasped. Ali screamed into the camera, "I am the greatest." It wasn't just arrogance, it was defiance. In an America that still demanded humility from its black athletes, this young man was daring to speak like a king. And then came the second shock. Just days after winning the title, he announced he had converted to Islam and joined the Nation of Islam, a group considered radical and dangerous by most Americans. He changed his name to Muhammad Ali, publicly rejecting his slave name. When white reporters continued to call him Cassius Clay, he snapped, "Cassius Clay is my slave name. I didn't choose it, and I don't want it." The backlash was immediate. Sponsors dropped him. Politicians attacked him. For many white Americans, Ali had just committed the ultimate sin, not just winning, but refusing to play the role of the grateful, obedient champion. He wasn't content to be the best. He wanted to be free. And that's when the real war began. In 1967, when the Vietnam War was at its bloodiest and the American government was desperate for more bodies, Muhammad Ali received his draft notice. He was expected to serve. He was expected to obey. But instead, he uttered one of the most defiant lines in sports and political history. "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong. No Viet Cong ever called me nigger." That single sentence split a nation. To some, it was treason. To others, it was truth. But to the US government, it was unacceptable. Ali refused induction into the army. Within hours, he was stripped of his heavyweight title, fined $10,000, facing 5 years in prison, and banned from boxing. At just 25 years old, the most famous athlete in the world had been erased from the sport he had revolutionized. His exile would last 3 years and 6 months. During that time, Ali didn't disappear. He doubled down. He became a voice for the anti-war movement, giving fiery speeches on college campuses, appearing on talk shows, and transforming from a sports icon into a civil rights lightning rod. While men like Martin Luther King Jr. marched in the streets, Ali fought in the court of public opinion. But not everyone in the black community was on his side. Older generations saw him as reckless, disrespectful. Even fellow athletes were divided. And behind the scenes, Nation of Islam was starting to fracture. Its controversial leader, Elijah Muhammad, began distancing himself from Ali. The organization was paranoid, secretive, and hostile to the growing civil rights movement. Slowly, Ali began to question their ideology. He would later move away from their doctrines and toward mainstream Sunni Islam, but at the time, he was trapped in a web of ideology, fame, and surveillance. Financially, he was crumbling. From million-dollar purses to barely scraping by, Ali resorted to college appearances for a few $100. Some of his closest confidants abandoned him. Others tried to exploit him. Yet he never gave in. He refused every deal that required an apology or compromise. He told ABC News in 1968, "If I thought war was right, I'd go tomorrow. But I can't kill nobody, no poor people who never lynched me or raped my mother." By the time 1970 rolled around, the public began to shift. The war had grown unpopular. The nation was tired. And Muhammad Ali, once called a coward, was being rebranded as a man of conviction. States like Georgia, with looser boxing commissions, finally allowed him to fight again. The comeback was set. But this wasn't just a sports return. This was a resurrection. Ali was slower now. He had lost his edge. But what he gained was myth. He stepped into the ring not just as a boxer, but as a symbol. Every punch he took was loaded with history. Every jab was a reminder of the price he had paid. And still, the real storm was yet to come. On October 26, 1970, after nearly 4 years in exile, Muhammad Ali returned to the ring in Atlanta, Georgia. The crowd roared as he dismantled Jerry Quarry in 3 rounds. But the fight wasn't just a victory, it was a national event. Cameras flashed. Reporters swarmed. Ali was back. But those who looked closely could see it. He was slower, heavier, and just a little less sharp. Then came the real test. March 8, 1971, Madison Square Garden, the fight of the century. Ali versus Joe Frazier, an undefeated champion who never left the sport. The nation split again. Tickets sold out in hours. Frank Sinatra was ringside, cameras rolling from every angle. What unfolded was not just a boxing match, it was war. Ali danced early, taunted, showboated. But by round 11, the tide turned. Frazier's left hooks battered Ali. Then in round 15, a thunderous left knocked Ali to the canvas. He rose, but the decision was unanimous. For the first time in his career, Ali had lost. That defeat stung, but it didn't end him. In fact, it only added to the legend. Over the next 3 years, he fought Ken Norton, broke his own jaw, beat him in a rematch. He fought Frazier again in 1974, and this time he won. But the world was waiting for one fight. One name: George Foreman, undefeated. A monster. He had destroyed Frazier in 2 rounds. No one thought Ali at 32 stood a chance. But on October 30th, 1974, in Kinshasa, Zaire, the impossible happened. The rumble in the jungle. Ali entered the ring under the African night sky, surrounded by chants of "Ali Bomaye, Ali Bomaye, Ali, kill him." But he didn't charge. He leaned back. He let Foreman swing. Round after round, Ali absorbed punishment, lying on the ropes, whispering insults, conserving energy. By round 8, Foreman was gasping. And that's when Ali struck. A 5-punch combination finishing with a right hand that sent Foreman crashing. The stadium erupted. Ali had done the unthinkable. "I told you I was the greatest," he roared again. But few noticed how long it took him to walk out of the ring. What Ali invented that night, the rope-a-dope, was brilliant. But it was brutal. He had taken over 600 punches, and he would take thousands more. The style made him immortal in the ring and slowly destroyed his brain. Still, he pressed on. He fought Chuck Wepner, who would later inspire the movie Rocky. He fought Ron Lyle Ernie Shavers, and again Frazier in the infamous Thrilla in Manila in 1975. That fight would be called one of the most savage in boxing history. It was the closest thing to death, Ali would later say. He won, but he was never the same again. His slurred speech, the tremors, the hesitation between words. But the world didn't want to see it. Ali was a champion, a myth, invincible. And when the myth starts to bleed, no one wants to watch. By 1976, Muhammad Ali was still the champion, but at what cost? The signs were no longer subtle. His speech had slowed. He blinked more. His hands trembled. Yet no one close to him dared to say it aloud. The myth was still too profitable. The press still clung to the narrative of the unbeatable warrior, and Ali himself. He was addicted to the spotlight, the roar, the illusion of invincibility. In 1978, the illusion cracked. Ali, bloated and undertrained, lost his title to Leon Spinks, a 25-year-old rookie with only 7 professional fights. The boxing world gasped. The greatest had been outboxed by a kid. But in a quick turnaround, Ali reclaimed his belt, in the rematch becoming the first man to win the heavyweight title 3 times. The victory was historic, but it was also hollow. Everyone saw it. This was no longer poetry in motion. This was punishment disguised as pride. Then came the darkest chapter. 1980, at 38, Ali returned from retirement to fight the deadly Larry Holmes. It was supposed to be a final show of dominance. Instead, it was a beating so merciless that Holmes cried after the fight. Ali didn't win a round. He barely landed punches. His corner, led by the legendary Angelo Dundee, refused to stop it until round 10 when the referee stepped in. Ali never fought again. Shortly after, in 1981, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's syndrome. The doctors were careful with their words. Neurological damage, they called it. But the truth was obvious. Years of absorbing punishment, thousands of blows to the head, it had all caught up. His once booming voice now trembled. His once fluid hands now shook. And for the first time, the man who never ran from any fight was losing one he couldn't win. But America, ever eager to rewrite its sins, began to embrace him again. The same country that once called him a coward, a traitor, now hailed him as a national hero. He lit the Olympic flame in 1996, his hands visibly shaking. Crowds wept. The cameras zoomed in. But few asked the hard question, how much did we take from this man before we learned to love him? Behind closed doors, things were worse. He struggled to speak. He depended on others for basic tasks. His fortune, once in the tens of millions, was under constant strain from medical bills, lawsuits, and the growing entourage of people who claimed to represent him. Ali, once in total command of every room he entered, now sat in silence, blinking slowly, trying to hold on. And even as he became a symbol of peace and tolerance, critics whispered, had he been used? Not just by boxing promoters, but by activists, politicians, even charity organizations, all eager to stand beside the legend, even as his body crumbled. The most devastating blows Ali ever took didn't come from Joe Frazier or George Foreman. They came later from the very world that built him up, tore him down, and then resurrected him for the cameras. Not to fight, but to perform one last role, the fragile hero. By the time Muhammad Ali entered his final decade, he was no longer a fighter, nor a voice, nor even a presence. He was an image, a trembling silhouette in a suit, seated quietly, while others spoke for him. Once feared by presidents, now he was paraded through award shows and charity events like a sacred relic. His eyes still burned with intensity, but the body, the voice, the fire were long gone. In 2005, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The ceremony was heartfelt. George W. Bush called him a man of peace. But many in the crowd remembered how Ali's refusal to go to war once made him America's most hated athlete. Now he was being honored by the very office that had tried to imprison him. The irony was thick, and so was the silence. By 2010, Ali could barely speak. His wife Lonnie handled all business decisions. Lawsuits from former handlers and estranged children emerged. His estate was being prepared for battle even before his death. In private, there were whispered stories family members who hadn't seen him in years old allies cut off and decisions being made behind closed doors. When Ali died on June 3, 2016, at the age of 74, it wasn't just the end of a boxing legend. It was the closing chapter of one of America's most complicated lives. The tributes flooded in. World leaders, former opponents, movie stars, they all praised him. They spoke of courage, of inspiration, of greatness. But few spoke of the damage, the price, the silence in the final years, the cost of being the greatest. Because the truth is, Ali paid for his fame with his flesh, with his mind, with decades of pain that no crowd ever saw. He was punished for speaking out, then used as a symbol by the very systems he defied. He fought wars that made him a hero and others that slowly broke him. He wasn't just the most famous boxer in history. He was America's contradiction in human form, defiant, beloved, used, discarded, and then sanctified. Was he the greatest? Yes, but not because of the knockouts or the belts. Because he told the truth when it cost him everything. Because he stood tall when the world wanted him to kneel. Because when they tried to silence him, he roared. And in the end, when his voice was finally gone, it was the world that spoke his name.